Colin Blunstone, I don't believe in miracles. You're listening to Crystal FM. Now, Colin Blunstone is doing a gig this Friday evening at the Jam House in Queen Street in Edinburgh. You can get tickets for it at www.skiddle.com. Delighted to say that Colin is my guest this afternoon. Colin, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Dave. Great to be on your show.
Well, great to have you, and great news that you're coming up to Edinburgh. Now, I did warn you just off air that I sometimes tend to be a little bit random in my interviewing, and the memory that came to my mind when I sort of was researching you is I noticed, I don't think you'll mind me saying, that you're up there in your 60s now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm only just in the 60s, actually. I'm towards the end of the 60s, and
well, that's great. You sound like you're in your sort of 20s, so that you're doing pretty good on that one.
Well, sometimes I feel like that too. I mean, they say music keeps you young, don't they?
Well, we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later and what it's like to get back on stage each time you do it. But I was thinking about this because when I was about 10 or 12, somebody gave me a Victorian penny. It was like 1897, and that would have been maybe about 60 years previous, and it seemed like this immense length of time between then and here. I had no sort of comprehension of that sort of length of time at that age. Now, you're about 60-something now. We won't give the exact age away. How does it feel looking back over that sort of period of time, so looking back 60 or 70 years? What does it look like to you from sort of the great sort of vantage point that you have now?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting because it sounds like we're not such different ages. I don't know, but I can remember being given Victorian coins and thinking that's just, lifetimes away from where I was as a child. But the opposite's true of this 50-year career in the music business. It seems to have gone in the blink of an eyelid, and I think it's quite fascinating how there seem to be sort of parallel universes, and some things go very quickly and some things go very slowly. But honestly, it really seems as though the Zombies started up, not that long ago. I can remember everything vividly from all my Zombies years, I suppose you'd call it. I remember it really, really well. And I hasten to add that when the Zombies first recorded in 1964, I thought we were incredibly lucky to be in that situation, but I really thought this was going to be a wonderful 2 or 3 year adventure. I thought careers in the music business lasted 2 or 3 years, and I think most people, if they're honest, in those days thought the same. And so no one's more surprised than me that here we are, 50 years on, and still recording and still playing. And I mean, I'm eternally grateful that I've got this opportunity to do the thing I love.
Now, you and the band originate, I think, in the St Albans area, which I think I'm right in saying is more or less a satellite town from London. When you were growing up, did you have any sort of sense at all that you were kind of destined for this, I'm going to say destined for greatness, because a lot of people really admire your work and say they've been influenced by your work and the work of the Zombies. Did you have any sense of that maybe when you're 8, 10, 12 or early in your teens?
No, not at all. I look back on my sort of school days as I can't understand what I was thinking. I don't think I was thinking about anything. I was just I loved sport. I think that if there was just a slight idea in my mind I might do something with a bit of glamour in it, it might have been for sport, but I wasn't really good enough, and that's the end of that. And it was just a chance conversation when I was at school with the guy who sat in front of me at school. He was involved in putting a band together, and he said, "You've got a guitar, haven't you?" Which I did have. And he said, "Well, why don't you join this band?" And that's how it started. It was just a chance thing. And the band that eventually became the Zombies started rehearsing. We played 1 or 2 little gigs, and gradually we built up a local fan base. And then we won a big rock competition, which led us to a recording contract. It's just the sort of thing you dream of, really. And that first recording session that we did ended with us recording She's Not There. and that went to number 1 in the States in Cashbox. I think it was number 2 in Billboard, and it was a hit all around the world. And I had no idea that that was coming. I think that's one of the wonderful things about life in general, but about the music business in particular, that you never really know what's going to happen next.
I think what must be pretty amazing, and what most bands would be jealous of, is the fact it was your very first, basically your very first release, wasn't it?
It was. It was our first record, and, of course you should be really grateful for any success that you get, and I am. But if we could have timed it, I think it might have been better for us if it had come a little bit later, so that we decided to become professional musicians before we had a hit record. And I think it would have done us good to have got out on the road and sort of struggled and paid our dues a bit before we had a hit record, because it was a lot for us to take in. And of course, as soon as in those days, record companies wanted 4 or 5 singles a year from you. And as soon as She's Not There was a hit, Decca Studios were onto us straight away. Well, where's the follow-up? Well, of course, we were only 18 years old, and we just realized we'd actually got 2 very good writers in the band. And the follow-up had to be written. And so we were in a bit of a difficult situation, because there was big pressure to keep recording. And, of course, these songs actually had to be written. And so it was a little bit of a difficult time. If we'd had a year to get out on the road and learn our trade a bit, I think we would have been better prepared for the onslaught that was about to happen, because we were travelling all around the world and continually under pressure to record and produce hit singles.
Let me ask you a sort of slightly philosophical question. Do you believe it was fate that it all sort of came together, or is it just like a coincidence, one of those things? Because one minute you're sort of basically a local band in St Albans, the next thing you're appearing on American TV, you're touring in the States, especially in those days, a massive thing where sort of air travel and the such was sort of fairly unusual. It wasn't like today when we all sort of hopped over to the States almost for a weekend. Was that fate, or was it just a coincidence?
Well, it's an interesting thought. The short answer is, I don't know. But, there were so many chance things that happened that ended up with us recording She's Not There. You do wonder if fate doesn't come into it. And the Zombies are sort of a strange band, because they actually finished, the first incarnation of the band, finished in 1967. And yet and they didn't have that many chart records. There were, in some countries there were more than in others. But there's been this continual interest in the Zombies, and especially their last album, which was called Odyssey and Oracle. And many magazines and radio stations have charted that as one of the best albums of all time. And yet it was never a hit at the time when it was released. It's kind of strange. And there's this huge interest in the Zombies, which has kind of encouraged us to keep this incarnation of the band going. People around the world want to hear the Zombies repertoire. And it's taken me completely by surprise. So there are a few mysteries in the way the Zombies have evolved that I don't really understand. Maybe it is fate, but as I said, the short answer is I just don't know.
Well, that's a very honest answer. So I want to concentrate mainly on your own music this afternoon. We were listening earlier to some of the tracks from the Zombies. I'm going to play one of your more recent pieces. This is 17 Over You by Colin Blunstone. 17 and Over You by my guest Colin Blunstone. Colin's doing a gig Friday night at the Jam House in Queen Street, Edinburgh. You can get tickets from Skiddle, which is skiddle.com. Colin, your voice has been described as wistful. I can't say the word this afternoon, but I suppose you'd call it slightly melancholic. Would that be a fair description?
Well, I know people have said that. I think I do quite like to sing beautiful sad songs, and not mawkish and not sentimental songs, but I do quite like sad songs if it's handled tastefully and it's beautiful. And people have said that my voice sort of matches that kind of thing, but I do sing quite a few up-tempo, happy-go-lucky tunes as well. I feel, just as at home singing the up-tempo songs, but I'm probably better known for singing sad songs, yeah.
Is that cathartic to sing those types of songs?
Well, it can be in a way, I suppose. I don't know about, well, maybe even on a personal level, if I wrote the song and it's a sad song, yeah, I think it can be a little bit cathartic. But if someone else wrote it, no, I mean, I think as an artist, you have to get into the song, and so it's like acting a part, really. You go into character, and then when you finish performing, you come out of character. So it doesn't go on and on. But for the time that you're actually working on that song, if it is a sad song, yeah, you're really feeling the lyric, and you probably are feeling a little bit sad.
We had Deborah Bonham, who I suspect you might have met in your travels on the show not so long ago, and I made the mistake of asking what was behind one of her sad songs, and she was very honest and told us, but I don't think we'll ask exactly what caused them, what stimulated the song today. But.
Okay, well, I mean, I never mind talking about them. I didn't write that song, but it's a great writer called Christian Phillips, and to me, it is a song of lost love and of looking back over times of innocent youth. And it seems, I think you could look back with a wry smile on your face and think about what you were doing when you were younger and how beautiful it all was and how intense it all felt. And that first love, you probably never will ever get over them, but you learnt and you have to move on, don't you? And to me, that's what that song's about.
I have to say that you sound incredibly upbeat. Is that something that you feel because you get on stage and you're out there with people? What is behind that?
Well, I think I really do enjoy what I'm doing, and so that kind of helps really. And also I find it quite exciting, even after all these years. It's still a thrill. The whole process of writing songs and recording them and then putting a tour together and getting out and playing live, it's still a thrill, and it does make me feel upbeat. I mean, music's what keeps me going, I suppose, really.
I have to say that looking at your publicity shots, if they are to be believed, which I'm sure they are, you're remarkably thin. What's the secret of that one?
I'm remarkably thin.
I mean, you've kept your weight down, which many of us who are advancing in years have not managed to do quite as adequately as maybe we should have done. Well,
I think I have sort of fit periods where I've always been a runner actually until quite recently, and I mean that helps to keep you thin. But I've got a bit of a cartilage problem in my knee. And so I haven't been running so much, so I'm not as thin as I was, I have to say. I'm not very good at, I eat a very relatively sensible diet. I wouldn't say it's very good, and I certainly enjoy the occasional beer. So I'm rather pleased that you've said that. That's very encouraging. I think I'll get back out running again, even if I have to hop with my bad knee.
I can assure you that if you and I were standing next to each other, you would be probably about half the thinness of me.
Right, okay.
And I'm actually sort of 10 or 15 years younger than you, so
we can go out running together.
I'm quite impressed, I have to say. Notice how quickly I changed the subject from running there. But now let's have a listen to another of your tracks. I think you did write this one, Caroline Goodbye. That's on CD. I think you got that out now, called On the Air Tonight. Am I right about that?
Yes, the new album is called On the Air Tonight. I think it probably came out a few months ago now. But that's the latest. I'm told that's my 11th solo album. I can't believe that. I mean, it's getting back to when we were talking about time earlier on. Mm-hmm. I can't believe that I've recorded 11 solo albums, but I have. And I've started collecting songs for my 12th, so there will be a 12th album.
Well, that's exciting. Let's take a listen. This is Caroline Goodbye. It's Caroline Goodbye by my guests this afternoon, Colin Blunstone, with a little bit of backing vocals from the F4 computer there, and also myself. Can I bring you up to date, Colin, and ask you about the modern music scene? What do you think about things like X Factor?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen X Factor. I've got sort of divided ideas about that, because in one way it's great that young people are getting national exposure, and I hope that it helps to kickstart their careers, and it generally is a help to them. I do worry that it's a lot for people to take on right at the beginning of their careers, to sing live on national television. It's not easy, and it's probably, especially if you win, then you're thrown straight away into the spotlight, and you have to try and sustain some kind of career. And I do sometimes worry for people that they haven't gone through all the levels of success and failure that most other artists have to go through. So I've got split ideas about it, really. I can see a good side to it, but there is a worrying side to it as well. It sort of reminds me of tribute bands. I have the same feeling about that. I want to see as many musicians working as possible, but if tribute bands are playing every night in a particular club, and sometimes where I'm playing I can see that they are, it means that there's no stage for new bands playing new music. So I think that's a bad situation, but I like the idea that more musicians are working, because they're in tribute bands. It's not always a black and white issue whether you like it or you don't like it. I can usually see two sides to the argument. Your experience must have been pretty similar, in as much as you were catapulted to fame like many of the TV contestants are today. Are you saying it's not all that it's supposed to be, that people think it is, that there's a whole different side that's behind the scenes that we never see? What, to X Factor? Well, just in general, when people get famous quickly. And well, I think overnight success is quite it's a wonderfully exciting thing, of course, but I think it's quite it's a huge change in your life. For anybody it is. And there will be elements of it that will be difficult to handle. If you win a national TV competition, you're going to find it quite difficult to just walk down the road, to get on the local bus, to go into the local pub. I remember when we first had a hit record, and that's not as high profile as winning X Factor, but I remember thinking, this is not going to change my life. I'm going to do exactly the same things I always did. Go out with my mates, go to the same pubs, go here and everywhere. But the thing is, you might not change, but people's attitudes towards you can change, and it can get a bit uncomfortable sometimes if you have just had overnight success. You'll find you might attract more attention than you're capable of handling. Do you find that people might, especially when you're young, people might try and use you? I'm sorry, people might what? Try and use you. Oh, it can happen, of course. You can be lucky and unlucky in professional circumstances. If you get a good manager and a good agent, you're with a supportive record company, then that's a wonderful thing. But there are a lot of people out there with questionable motives, and certainly an overnight success can attract the wrong kind of people. But I think you have to think of the music business, or if you like, maybe show business, as if it's a lifetime's career. There's going to be lots of ups and lots of downs, and if you get into the control of some of these dubious people, even though it might not be a very happy experience, there are things to be learned from, and you won't make that mistake next time around. And I think it is best to think of it as a lifetime's career or vocation. If you're going to make records and write songs, As I said, there will be many ups and many downs, and at the end of it, you come out and hopefully you've kind of broken even with the ups and the downs, and you've learnt about the pitfalls. But there's no substitute. There's no substitute for experience. There's only one way to find out about all these pitfalls, and I'm afraid, that's to go through it all.
Just the reality of it, as opposed to the glamour that we're sometimes.
Yes, there is
with.
another side to it. It's probably not as bad as people think it is. I mean, a lot of the music business is down to common sense, really, and probably a bit of luck as well.
Very interesting. Well, just to wrap up with, I was listening to some of the Zombies tracks last night, sort of in preparation for talking to you, and there's a definite, I mean, when you listen to that type of music, there's a definite type of 60s feel to it. Compared to today, it's a very different sort of type of music that's in the charts now. What do you feel about the kind of more modern music that's in the charts most of the time here?
Well, I tell you, I think there are some very good young singer-songwriters around at the moment, but I'm not a great fan, me personally, and this music isn't written and recorded for people like me anyway, but I'm not a great fan of modern sort of dance music. That may be something to do with the fact that I can't dance, I've got two left feet.
Well, we're all getting a bit older, maybe.
I'm not a great fan of what you would hear down at the local disco, but I do think there are some great singer-songwriters around at the moment, and I'm only just back from the States, to tell you the truth. I was in Chicago about 7 or 8 days ago, and I'm trying to catch up with what's happening at the moment, and I get that from my daughter who listens to modern music, and I try and tap into what she's listening to, and so at the moment I'm going through a period of catching up on what's been happening while I've been away.
Is there any particular modern artist or band that you particularly like?
Well, I've been listening to, there's a band called London Grammar, and there's a singing group called the Pentatonics, which are very interesting. Bruno Mars is good, John Legend, John Mayer. There's loads of good people out there, and I'm enjoying, actually, because I've been on the road pretty much constantly since February, and I am a little bit out of touch, but I'm really enjoying trying to catch up on some of the young artists that are out there.
Colin, I wanted to thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I'm sure you've got many, many things to do to talk to us here.
It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed having a chat.
Colin Blunstone will be at the Jam House in Queen Street, Edinburgh on Friday. You can get tickets from skiddle.com, skiddle.com. Doors open at 6 p.m. Absolute pleasure, as I said, talking to you, Colin, and I hope you'll come back to Scotland many, many more times.
Thanks, Dave. It's been great. Cheers. All the very best.
Right, we'll go out with Colin Blunstone, So Much More.